Why is focusing on death actually important for us to live life to the fullest?
I know that immediately it sounds like something we want to run from, right? And I know it's counterintuitive. It's like, who wants to engage in a discussion, let alone listen to a freaking podcast about the end? But wait, let me tell you that if we talk about our ultimate demise in the right way, like in a way where we could just be real about it and maybe poke some fun at it and just laugh at it, our shared demise, that can be the very thing that helps us to live with more intention. Because, like in most things in life, we need to kind of sort of know that it's a limited time only situation in order to take
Mm.
it seriously, or maybe less serious, depending on what you need. So, while, yeah, it'll be probably always be the most morbid topic ever, if we mess around with it, we can use it to our advantage to say, like, maybe I should get on with it. Like, what am I waiting for? So that's kind of the
Mm.
spirit of it. It's like, let's use it to our advantage, not let's like head for the hills and not talk about it.
Yeah. But the interesting thing that you actually share in a lot of your work is like death is actually the number one thing that we fear. So
Mm.
so it's interesting that a lot of people actually avoid talking about it or avoid thinking about it. What would be your
Yes.
message for that person that never wants to talk about death or think about death? Because like you said, it is a bit of a morbid topic.
Yes. Well, my first instinct, because what I want to do really is like shake people, not too violently, but I want to number one say, really, like my goal is for us to wake up to live. And the best
Mm.
way I found to do it through research and experience is by talking about the ultimate deadline. But I am not an idiot, like not a total idiot. I do know that this is the fear that we come by honestly. So my first instinct, honestly, is to just hug someone. It's like, I get it. It's a crappy reality that we're going hard and trying to love our lives and then, snap your fingers one day like it's all going to be gone. I want to normalize and say, yeah, you're perfectly, fabulously, beautifully human if this is a squeamish topic. And could we just hang out for a little bit? Like, pour a drink. Let's just take a quick second. Like, let's just linger a little bit in the idea. Because, again, I am obviously very enthused by what research shows. It's like it actually can be helpful to wake us up to stop prolonging our lives. Because we do this thing where we're like, I'll do it later. Like we defer our ideas and our dreams just because they could be scary or whatnot, or we're busy. I think that it's worth it to embrace the fear. There's this quote that I just love that the fear of death is rivaled only
Mm.
by our fear of living, and it sounds weird, but I think most of us can agree that it actually takes more courage sometimes to live the full life we want to be living. Um, and that unfortunately takes a little bit of a rankling. So I'm here to rankle.
I love that. I'm curious, what spurred this kind of passion and curiosity surrounding death? Was there something in
Mm-mm.
your life that kind of brought you to that research and that work?
Initially a soft approach and then more of a broader wake up. So I've been fascinated by this concept of seize the day, carpe diem. And then I learned about the concept called memento mori, this idea of remember we must die. Again, it sounds like, what? Wait, what's with all the
Mm.
skulls? And I do like skull decor. So, yeah, but it was this idea of, wow, life's short, let's use it. And that's all been like, it's all very softened, right? Like seize the day is very my ultimately my message, which is it's not about the dying, it's about the living. So I've always been intrigued by that philosophy and psychology because it comes from two schools, and even religion, harking back for many years, centuries. But most of it for me kind of collided. Gosh, I don't even remember the year it was, almost 20 years ago. My mom had a heart attack and died when she was in her late 50s, and it was unanticipated. And my experience with that was so startling, not even really because she died, that was unfortunate for sure, but because my job was to clean up her place, her apartment after she died. Whew, man, that woman had a lot of things, but mostly the thing that woke me was that she had a desk full of all of her dreams. Like she had manuscripts. She was a really good writer and she wrote children's books and novels. She wrote short stories and she was an illustrator. And she had all these cool ideas for businesses, stores she wanted to open, or like even a hiking
Mm.
stick business, like hand carving. She was so creative. She was hand carving these sticks she found. She used to live out west, so there was, I don't know, a lot of wood lying around. But she never executed on her dreams. So here I am cleaning up her place. I'm out anyways because she's gone. And then it's like, oh my God, like look at all of these intentions that have died with her. And she didn't on any of them. Mostly, well, I can't determine exactly why. A lot of it was confidence that she didn't feel like, oh, who am I to send this manuscript out? And then a lot of it was because I talked to her about her dreams. She'd be telling me she'd be writing, or she'd be telling me she wanted to open the dog business, biscuit business, or whatever. But it was this notion we have, which is, I'll get to it someday,
Hmm.
and like in her case, someday, there was no someday. And that really startled me because I recognized, okay, I have all sorts of ideas too. And I'm also conveniently pushing them ahead, like, oh, I'll get to it when work dies down, or oh, I'll figure it out later when, like, later. What are we messing with? Not just because there might not be a later, but I'm actually not here to be that, like, I don't want to rattle the cage around that. I'm not trying to tell all of us that, like, we could all die today. I mean, yeah, technically that's true. It's unlikely. I'm actually more interested and encouraging about this idea of why defer for later a dream you have for today when, like, today kind of is all we have. And like, what about this next year of our lives? Who is taking a stand to make sure that we are actually going after our goals and living? And it doesn't have to be goals, right? Like, I'm not talking about, it doesn't have to be a big thing like opening a business or starting a nonprofit or running a marathon. Do those things if you want to. A lot of it is just like making decisions that make us feel more alive for as long as we have. And again, all we kind of sort of have is now. So why not? So yeah, that mostly it was my mom um, with her. I call it the land of dormant intentions, her place
Hmm.
when I cleaned it out because it was just this sort of sad, like repository of all these dreams.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful story. And I think a lot of people listening can really resonate with that feeling that, like, there's so much that they want to do in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all have our aspirations and our goals and dreams, but society, I feel like, kind of makes us believe like, oh, but it's for later because
Mm-hmm.
now we need to focus on like this job, or like
Yeah,
it's just not the right time, right? And I
yeah.
think, if I'm speaking to like personal
Mm-hmm.
circumstance and things that I hear a lot of people say, it's like, we want to wait for when that time feels perfect, or
Mm-hmm.
when, we have a little bit more experience, when that imposter syndrome doesn't feel so strong.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that you had that moment where you just like saw all of these dreams that your mom had, and it kind of just
Mm-hmm.
like shook you by the shoulders and opened your eyes to the fact that like life is so short. And
Mm-hmm.
it's something that I really like to share in my content and the work that I'm doing and come back to a lot because it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it be like something in your life that makes you realize how short life is, or, just something you need to constantly remind yourself of, like the reality is, like, as you said, there is no better time to start something than now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about too this idea a lot of regret. Do you have any, like research or insight in the work that you do about people having regret looking back later in life? Quick little interruption here. If this episode is resonating with you, if you want to start to take steps towards a life that really feels aligned, towards a life that you love, one that's filled with things that you want, that makes you feel happy, if you feel inspired to explore connecting with me in a coaching call, check out my website linked below. Set up a time with me. Let's connect. I would love to learn more about your life and support you through this journey. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Oh, you're hitting the core of this, Camille. I love this so much. There are people, by the way, who are regret researchers, and like they just study. I mean, they may do other things with their academic prowess, but they really get into detail about regret. And Dan Pink's
Mm,
one of them, but like a bunch of them who are get really serious about this topic. And I love it, love it, love it so much it hurts. And I just want to be clear that when most of us hear the word regret, we immediately go to this notion of when we did that dumb thing, oh man, we wish we hadn't have done it. So it's kind of like lamenting over mistakes. And
mm,
that is a definite branch of regret. And that's called like regrets of commission, like you made that mistake, like you cheated on the test, or you married that man, or you dyed your hair that color, like, oh, I wish I hadn't have done that. That's fine. But that's actually not the most salient type of regret that can haunt us. What is the most insidious kind of regret are called regrets of omission. And those are the regrets about the things that we didn't do.
mm,
And they, to me, are super sizzly. And by the way, I just love the fact that like based on psychology, we tend to forgive ourselves over time and on our deathbeds for sure about like, who cares that I did that dumb thing? But what we don't sit with well or recline well with on our deathbed with hopefully with lots of morphine is, oh, like what if I had gone for the big job? Or like what if I put myself out there and opened up that business? Or
Mm.
what if I did move to Saskatchewan like I've always wanted? Or like what if I did put myself out there and date? Or like all the things that we do. It could be something big, it could be something small, and I want to just right now say that there is no regret, that it's not a contest. Or sometimes on a deathbed, I in my research I do a lot of work where talking to people involved in hospice, and oftentimes it's the regrets about boldness that people have. And I know that that would be mine. Like, I wished I'd just been braver to put myself out there and finish what I started, or be not so concerned about like reaching out to people, for example, for help, because who cares? It's regrets about connection, like I wished I had just talked to my brother, even though we had that rift. Or I wished I'd been more present with my family. It doesn't always have to be like I wished that I had, started the office in Taiwan. It
Mm.
could be anything, but it's the regrets about those things that we wished we'd had. My way of wording it is I call them pregrets, and I get this.
Mm.
If I do a workshop, for example, or like right now, like everybody here listening can think about if you were on your deathbed now, sorry about your luck, but you're here. So that's the month, that's the moment. What would you look back on and think, oh, like I always wanted to do that thing, but I never did,
Yeah.
regardless of why you didn't. And it could be like I wanted to write the book, or I wanted to learn that language, or do that, trip back to my ancestors' home, or make up with my relative, or whatever it is. The good news is like you're still kicking, and that's why it's a pre-regret. It's a regret beforehand, and you have a chance now if you want to rectify, to do something, to take one step forward, even though I know that it's intimidating and scary. I think we used, can I just branch for a sec? Delaying things because we're busy. While like you hit on it a minute ago, like we get into this thing, like I'm really busy with work. And of course, there are life factors, right? Like people will get busy with kids or with work or with the things that sweep us up. And yet, there are maybe some aspirations you might have for yourself that I believe are often conveniently deferred because of the very valid story about being busy. But it is convenient because there is a risk associated in many cases with going after the thing we want. And the risk could be literally like rejection and failure, which sure doesn't feel fun. It could be the risk of just feeling a little bit like an idiot, like, oh, I've always wanted to go and learn how to, do watercolor painting. Well, if you go to a watercolor painting class, you might feel like a bit of a buffoon if you don't know how to paint and you're embarrassed. So that's a reason not to do it right away, even though you dream about doing it. Same thing about maybe running the marathon I mentioned, or whether it's physical, creative, personal development. There's a hurdle we often have to overcome that means that maybe I wouldn't like mean on Wednesday nights I'd have to go and commit and go to that class, but that might take me out of my comfortable routine. So I guess I just want to point out and normalize that it is often a hurdle, and there's fear and there's discomfort associated with living,
Mm.
and we have to override that. And most of us, once we get going on the thing that we said we were curious about trying, you get swept up in it, and that's what living is. But no one ever said it was easy. So there's my soapbox for the moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love that you brought this up, because one thing that I did want to talk about is like, what are the biggest things holding people back from doing what they actually want? It's honestly not really talked about how anxiety can often peak in the springtime. As the weather improves, there's this pressure that we all feel to be more social, to come out of our shell, to constantly be on the go. I don't know about you, but I've definitely found this to be super overwhelming coming out of winter, evolving into spring, and it's a lot to keep up with, especially if you're like me and may have actually been enjoying that slowdown of winter, only to suddenly feel like we're thrown back into the hustle that we're honestly still recovering from last year. And on top of that, on social media, we get to see all the vacation photos photos, everyone living their best lives, making us feel like if we do slow down, we're going to miss out and fall socially behind. If you can relate to any of this anxiety from social pressures, comparison, fear of falling behind, I can 100% relate, and I'm right there with you. To help navigate any of this springtime anxiety, my sponsor BetterHelp can connect you with a therapist who can help provide support. The majority of BetterHelp members seek support for anxiety, and 69% of members report improved anxiety symptoms after 6 weeks of therapy on BetterHelp. And it's easy to start. Just fill out a questionnaire and you'll be matched with a therapist in as little as a couple of days, and you can easily switch therapists at any time for no extra cost. They'll carefully make sure your therapist is well qualified, and their customer support team is there if you have any questions along the way. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.3 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. Let BetterHelp help rule your anxiety so it doesn't rule you. Click the link in the description of this episode or go to betterhelp.com/fulfilled and get 10% off your first month of therapy. So it sounds like from what you just shared, like, okay, being too, quote, busy, right? Like, oh, I'm so busy. So that's great because I'm actually way too terrified to go do that thing I really want anyways, right? Or, fearing of what other people think and fearing that rejection. And what came to mind when you were speaking about that is this idea that Alex Hormozi shares, a creator that I really love, an entrepreneur. He shares this idea that, like, whenever he finds himself worrying about what other people think of him, he's like, will that person be at my funeral? Like, probably not, like, so whether it be someone being like, oh, but my coworkers are going to judge me, or like my friends are going to think that's weird, or like, what if they, what if they laugh at me, right? Or what if I fail or something like that? Like, those people that you're fearing the judgment from will likely not be at your funeral if we're staying on the topic of death, right? And it was just such a powerful insight to me because we often at least I did for so long, like, let these people who truly are not very significant in our lives, or maybe just in our lives for such a short time, hold us back from going for the thing that we really want.
I love that so much. And you commented earlier on, the idea about kind of the imposter syndrome, like waiting to kind of overcome it. And can we all just acknowledge, like, confidence doesn't come and then you do the thing. Confidence comes from trying the thing and maybe even messing it up a little bit. But we have to take the first step, and then we build a muscle that feels like confidence. And or I think I've just come to realize I'm not going to ever eradicate the discomfort about imposter syndrome or judgment, whether it's self-judgment, which is often like, I'm a real bitch to myself, and worrying about what other people think about me. I'm never going to fix that. What I do now too is I anticipate it. And when I used to coach one-on-one, I'd have people even just like do a spreadsheet and just track it, be like, yep, I worried what my first boss was going to think, check. And I'm just like, that's fine. Like, just note it and expect it. And it's part of your process. And it actually means that you're moving and grooving and doing something, because now, like, what action are you taking? And the whole thing about people who is going to be at your funeral, you twigged me into remembering the research around people who have had near-death experiences or even just brushes with death, right? Like that close call, whether it was like a motorcycle accident or falling or any diagnosis that's certainly almost dire. The most remarkable thing that happens to them is, like, they emerge out of the weeds in the woods of, oh my God, I almost died. And they have this, not everybody, but many have this like clearing, like, of seeing what matters and doesn't. And one of the coolest things is they get to dismiss the petty worries about what other people think and so on. So I'm not here to suggest that we all like try and rig it today, that we almost die but don't, because it would obviously be super risky. But like, imagine, back to this idea, all we can do as mere mortals who are not almost dying today is say, what if I did almost die? What if I came home from the hospital today? And I do this vivid visualization personally, because I know a lot of people, having done this research, who have told me their stories and about how when they get to come home from the hospital and they're in the drive home and they get home and like there's this moment of clarity of like, this bullshit is irrelevant. I don't have to care about what, I'm not going to dance around and join her committee because she wants me to and please her. That doesn't matter anymore. I'm going to focus on this because I now see the sanctity and preciousness of life. And so that's where I want to be. I'm so jealous that they've had these moments of wake up. And I'm like, I can do the same thing. I can imagine. And so when I do that, I think, who am I not to try and write that article that has been intimidating me? Or who am I not to reach out to that famous person and send them my book and hope that maybe they enjoy it? Like, who cares? We're all ticking time bombs. Let's just go for it.
Yeah. It's so beautiful how you realize how precious life is when it's almost taken from you. You know, it's like when you almost lose that thing. It's like when you lose something like your wallet and then you find it and you're just like, wow, I'm so happy for this wallet right now. You know, it's just such an interesting and beautiful realization. And I want to get into this idea about control. You share this idea that we're not really in control of our lives. Can you share a little bit more about this take?
Yeah, I've struggled with this topic personally, and I probably, always will to an extent. This idea, like, I want to be organized and I want to get my ducks in a row and plan it, and I want the outcomes to be the way that I have intended. Thank you very much. And then
Mm,
someone upstairs or wherever they come from laughs. It's like, yeah, okay, honey, like, just like chill out a quick second. I'm going to throw you a curveball just to show you that you are not in control. And I think that there's a certain sense of relaxing into that is hard for many of us to practice equanimity. And I wrote an article on this a couple years ago or so, and I go back to it sometimes to read even my own words, like practice what I preach. Like, equanimity is this sense of having like a comfortable like acceptance. So it's like part Buddhist, but part like, I recognize and I accept that sometimes the garbage that flows our way in life, the things that happen to us, I can't control that. And how am I going to be at peace with it and accept it and not like rail against it? Because the more I cling and grit my teeth about how I don't want it to be this way, well, what's that doing other than ruining my existence right now? So I think that there's one part equanimity, and then there's also a big chunk, and I'm a big believer of agency and intention and action. And this is
mm,
the seesaw that I struggle with. But I always, you're trying to find the balance, and some days and weeks and months are better than others. But it's this idea of, okay, I can't just sit back and say, well, if everything's out of my control, I should put my feet up, make a margarita, and wait for things to happen, good or bad. That does not feel very constructive, right? I think that in the spirit of us knowing life's short and recognizing through this scarcity of time, again, as a motivator, not as a, existential crisis inducer. Wow, like, these are the things that are important to me right now. And take your list and you reshuffle it because it'll change. Yeah, these are the things that are going to matter. I want to write the book, and I want to do like random acts of kindness, like one a week. I want to do, this is the life I want to live. And then you start to take action towards it with the assumption that it's going to lead you to feeling a certain way. Like, this is the kind of person I want to become. This is the kind of life I
mm,
want to live that makes me feel a sense of satisfaction and well being. And on that ride, while you are, for example, writing that book, you might also then experience, like, back to things being out of our control, you may have a hell of a time finding an agent, right? Or you may, in the midst of all that, have develop fibromyalgia and your hands hurt so much that typing is hard. Like, that's the equanimity of, okay, this book, when I birth it, is going to be even more precious because it was even harder to write. So
mm.
it's that balance between identify what you want and take action towards it that's purposeful. And along the way, just embrace the fact that, like, the shit show's going to happen.
Yeah. I love too, in what you just shared, that you alluded to the fact that what we can control and
Mm.
what we can take steps towards is
Mm.
who we are becoming along the way and
Oh,
who we're showing up as. And the things that are outside of our control are the external outcomes and results, right? But and this is where I struggle too. And I think a lot of people struggle with that shift between having tunnel vision on the outcome and result instead of focusing on who you are and who you're becoming along the way. And it's going to be a very frustrating and long life if you're constantly chasing these very specific outcomes and results, because those are ultimately the things outside of your control. Despite those steps that you're taking, life just happens, right? The shit show's going to happen, like you said. And for me, I'm constantly shifting my focus from needing that certain outcome or result from the thing that I'm taking steps towards, and
yeah.
instead being like, who am I becoming along the way? And like, Yeah, I love this feeling of feeling proud and accomplished, taking steps towards something and doing work that I value and just constantly trying to detach from needing a certain outcome or result. And every time that I do that, again, constant reminder and shift, I feel like the work is a lot more fulfilling and I'm a lot more intentional and present in it.
I love everything you just said so much. It's almost like choking me. This is why people work with you, right? It's because you help them see this. Like, it takes a very self-actualized person to stop and take stock regularly to do this. I'm gonna take my little self to Starbucks and do the evaluation of like how like am I becoming the person I want? And there's this concept in positive psychology, especially called like the ideal self. One can
Mm,
Google it and there are exercises, right? It's as it sounds like who is this version of myself that is the person that in my language would I be proud of when I died? Like that I would love for people to describe. And that sounds external because we're not living for other people to be able to say, she was so generous, which might be nice. But are you becoming that person? And then you need to take stock of that because all we have to do is edit. Like I learned once, this might be wrong, but that an airplane is like 95% of the time, it's sort of slightly off course in its operating system, whether it's the pilot or the autopilot is like just gently shifting it back. We're just,
mm,
we're always just a little shift off. And then that's why, though, I do think working with a coach like you is essential in order to get that orientation back to, yeah, am I being the person that I want to be? And if so, like, are my behaviors backing it up? Oh, I need to make
mm,
the following tweaks. Because right now I find myself, oh, all of a sudden I got a little lost in the shuffle of like, this goal is everything. I have to get this promotion or else. When it's like, but wait a second, what's the bigger picture? It's that you want to make a difference and you want to inspire people in the world of marketing. Well, okay, how are you doing that even if you didn't get the big promotion? And getting you to think about like, the way that we just fiercely dig our claws into the goal that we think is supposed to be the thing for us. I'm all about identifying and going after something and either like reveling when we make it and or I also think it's just as life inducing to not get it and still feel alive. Because can we talk about that for a second? Like back to the
mm,
risks of going after our goals. I think we don't give ourselves enough credit for being resilient. I think, we're kind of all or nothing. I know I can be, where like, I've got to make this thing happen. And if I don't, it's going to really crush me. And so, well, therefore, I won't go for it because it's a heck of a lot easier to dream about doing that thing and hold it in my
mm,
little heart, like, well, one day I'll do it. And there's less, like, there's still sizzliness about having a dream that you're going to do someday. There's still like a low voltage energy there that will carry us decades until we die and then we didn't do it. But I would still contend, and this again through research and experience, that by making the decision to go for the dream, for example, and I'll come back to writing the book just to carry the example through, I said a second ago, then the process of doing it and putting it out there, and maybe it doesn't go the way that you wanted, maybe it doesn't get picked up, or it doesn't go the way you planned. The feelings associated with that, if we were to plot them on a graph, are so much richer and better and full of satisfaction in life and all the juiciness versus the feeling about not trying at all, staying safe, having the wistful regret, especially at the end, but even on the way to the end. I don't care about the end. If you're on your deathbed, you're going to be dead in 5 minutes. And I don't think we're thinking much after that about what we didn't do. I'm more concerned. I mean, who knows? But I think like, what about like the walking path to our deathbed where we're doing that thing where we're like, yeah, I want to do it. And maybe you're hearing, like someone's listening right now and hearing our conversation. And most people, if you're human, you're doing that thing where you're like, but a goal that you have been wanting. I'll just say the
mm.
process of trying, even if you swing and miss, that is still so full of very important fertilizer to do the continuing next thing, to feel alive and then pursue what's next and next and next rather than not doing it at all. And trust me, I was an expert until before my mom died in dreaming and not doing. And
Yeah,
that's just like, there's no energy in that.
absolutely. Yeah. And it's such an important thing to talk about too, right? Because when you go for that thing, right? When you write the book, right? We'll stick with that example. And it doesn't go exactly as you hoped, you still gain so much from the experience. And this is something I speak a lot too. It's like, even if it was really hard, a lot harder than you thought, even if there was like all these obstacles and challenges and struggles along the way, and even if you wanted to give up a lot at times, it's through those difficult experiences that you learn and grow the most. And so you're becoming this like resilient and really strong person through that difficult experience. But beyond that, when you get to like finally releasing the book, right? Let's say, and it didn't look exactly like you hoped it would, but then you're like, oh, but even if this outcome and result didn't look exactly like I hoped or thought it would in my mind, I'm okay. The world is not on fire and everything is okay. And it turns out I didn't need that specific outcome and result. And it turns out I was actually doing this for the process and the journey and to grow into who I was supposed to grow into throughout this process. But it's easier to see in retrospect because it's like easier to see when we're at that end point and then like, oh, yeah, it turns out this is just a moment and it was more about like the months or years leading up to this.
So cool. You reminded me of a quote I've always enjoyed. It's like a love hate to this quote, but that a
Mm,
smooth sea never made a skillful mariner. Oh, damn it. Like I like smooth seas. I don't even like the water, but
mm,
like I just like why can't it just be smooth? Okay, yeah, you know why? Because when it's choppy, you get to learn your skills and become a better mariner, if that's even still a word. And then, yeah, back to the book, like hard won goals undoubtedly are the ones that have that greater sense of satisfaction. Arthur C. Brooks co-wrote a book with Oprah, and he does tons of research through Harvard on positive psychology and human motivation. And he's very clear that the recipe for happiness, if you boil it all down, the idea of a sense of satisfaction is only derived through effort. Like working at something that is not working well initially. Like if it was just smooth and you got to like press the button and say, okay, I wrote the book and it was easy, and then I found an agent and I got the publisher and I did all it's done. Well, that might feel good initially, but you know that there's a far richer experience when there are ups and downs. That's the roller
mm.
coaster of life, right? Like, yeah, you gotta enjoy the ride, ups and downs.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. What is the significance of 4,000 Mondays?
Roughly, that's what we get, and
Mm,
it's on average. Women roughly get like 82 years, men roughly get 78, and I call my company 4,000 Mondays because people might be like, well, why Mondays? Like Mondays are the shittiest, and I say I agree, and that's precisely why I want to use it so that it actually feels more visceral of a question to go, when I wake up on a Monday, however many I have left, and like for me, I know this Monday it was 1,748 on average. And
mm,
that's again the stuff that keeps me honest. It keeps me like, why are you prolonging your goals, honey bunny? But when I look at a Monday, Monday is like, am I looking forward to my week ahead because of how what I've got going on, what I've designed, how I've decided to spend my time and energy and who I talk to and my what do I do in my discretionary time and work and so on? Or am I dreading it? Or am I like happy to be alive? And do I have anything to look forward to this week that I have made happen for myself? So
mm,
Mondays, I think, are just that much more, more of an interesting litmus test of the life you are living. Because again, we get to design most of it, even though I think sometimes we just think we're going through the motions, or we're going like we have a work life in front of us that carries us through this like lazy river of life. We
mm,
get to be the ones to design it. And so with limited time only, again, back to scarcity, it's called temporal scarcity. That concept is that we value things that are limited more than we do if we just think it goes on forever. Check. And am I designing my week ahead, one of my precious Mondays, to be one that makes me feel alive or not?
yeah. I think this is such a cool reframe. And I'm really glad that we're ending on this idea because I think that that's one of the biggest flaws in society right now, or I won't say flaws, maybe like things that people are struggling with, right? Is going through the motions, feeling an autopilot just on that hamster wheel. Like most people dread Mondays. Like you hear Sunday scaries all over now, right? Because people go into Monday being like, oh, another Monday. But with the work that you do, you're reframing this like you get another Monday and you only have this limited number of Mondays. And I just got chills saying it out loud. And it's just, yes, it's a scary and intimidating thought, but more important than that, it's eye opening and it's the reminder that we need to take going into every single Monday and every single day. Like, I get another day, and there are not unlimited days. And I love that you alluded to, like, yeah, you get to design your life. You get to create your life, and you get to choose how positive and excited you are going into this day. And you're the only one that can choose to actually go after that thing that you actually want as well.
I love your summary. That is just so perfect. And hearing you talk about it too gave me the feeling of you're damn right. Yes.
Yeah.
We get one go as far as we know. If we get more, that's cool. I don't know, but all we know is in this life we only die once. That back to the title of the book. And so why
Yeah.
not? Why not
Yeah.
just give it a go? Let's get to the end and feel proud of how we did what we did. Again, without it needing to be pressured, because I feel very clear that living an astonishingly alive life doesn't need to look big to other people or meet other people, like the view of how big was your life, how many times did you get on a yacht, how much money
Mm.
did you make. None of that. Living an astonishingly alive life for you might be that you got to walk in the nature trail near your home like every week, and that lit you up and made you feel so connected to this earth and planet and life you get to live, and that for you makes you feel alive. Walk in that nature preserve as much as you can.
Jody, you are so cool. Thank you so much for taking the time today. If anyone listening wants to read her book or find more of Jody, it'll all be linked in the show notes. Thank you so much. You're awesome.
Thank you, Camille. You're great.
Hopefully there was something in this episode that really resonated with you. If it did, leave a comment on the episode. Let's connect, let's talk, share your thoughts on Spotify or Apple, wherever you are listening. And if you're not already, press follow or subscribe on the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week on your journeys to living more fulfilled.